Hey, yo, I'm the old man. And no, this is not a video game video. Clearly, it's a tier maker because everybody's doing tier makers. And I thought, you know what might be a good idea? I'm going to do my own tier maker. And of course, I'm going to do it over one of my favorite bands of all time and that nobody else has really heard of because I just cannot make content that other people want to see. So today we're gonna rank every Deliverance album. Deliverance is probably one of my top five bands of all time. Um, I've been listening to them for 30 years, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and rank all the albums. This is, of course, my opinion, and it doesn't necessarily mean like objective, what's objectively this or that. It's all subjective. I've got every album on here, I believe, that has the Deliverance name. The only exception is the Eraserhead album here. And the reason why I have that one is because that was Jimmy Brown and it was Manny Morales, John Knox, and kind of the Learn River Disturbance team. So I kind of count that one. I'm counting that one in this one, but it's not an official Deliverance release. Everything else is official Deliverance. Um, all of the stories, anecdotes are just crap I've remembered from things Jimmy has said. Um, if I recall correctly, which I may not. So if Jimmy ever watches this video, he is free to chime in and whatever he with corrections if he wishes. Um, but it's just I've listened to a lot of interviews with him over the years, and so a lot of it's I just my brain prioritizes that stuff. So anyway, let's get started. The first, everything is in release order here. So the first one, and I don't know if you can see my pointer or not, but it doesn't matter. So, the first one is their demo, greeting of death, not greetings, greeting of death. 6 song demo that came out before. I never heard the demo growing up. I never, so I mean, I knew it existed, but I'd never heard it. So I hadn't heard it until a couple of years ago when it was reissued. Well, actually, that's not true. I heard it like when it was reissued in the 2000s or whenever that was. Um, but I don't really have the same, so I don't have the same affection for it that somebody who had it originally would have it, but I'm going to go ahead and move that one to the B tier. Um, if you've ever heard it, it's certainly good. I can see why they got signed. I can see why people were excited about them. I just wasn't super excited about that album because I never heard it until later, and then it's just demo material, and so nothing wrong with it. Just it's their demo. Um, and that's so I don't even really have anything to say that much about it. Um, Other than a lot of these songs would show up on albums, I think, except Speckled Bird, which was like kind of a joke country song that I guess was pretty popular. Um, and then their debut, of course, was phenomenal. I actually heard this after Weapons, um, because we'd heard Weapons first, and I think this is, I mean, if you want to like, hey, what's classic Christian metal about? This is absolutely an album to put on that list. I'm going to go ahead and put this one up on the S tier. Um, I am one of those few that actually enjoys this one more than Weapons. I think it's just, and I'm not sure why that is, but I think the riffing is great. The songs are great. Jimmy's voice is great. It is that perfect kind of mix of Metallica and Queensryche that kind of was sort of the early years of Deliverance. And this one, I mean, I listen to all these regularly, but so it doesn't matter. But this is great. All great songs, stuff that's they're still playing in concert to this day. No Time, uh, Temporary Insanity is a monster tune. I don't know if they're playing that one. Awake is great. Like there's just it's all great. It's all great, and I love it. And if I like had to choose between those two, um, Weapons of Deliverance, I tend to prefer the first one, but so I that's it's our first S tier. And weapons. So next one is weapons. Weapons of Our Warfare. This is by far their most popular album. This is probably the thing that they're most well known for, much to Jimmy's consternation, because everybody's always asking him to do weapons too. I remember this was my first Deliverance album. I got it at Kingdom Bound in 1990. So I have fond memories of listening to that and then going to Ocean City, New Jersey with my family and rocking out to it. And really, what to be fair, like if I'm being objective, Weapons is definitely like everything is taken up a notch from the debut. Like the riffing, like Flesh and Blood has one of the best riffs I've ever heard as a metal fan in my life. Like that is one of my favorite metal riffs of all time. The production is better. Um, it's epic. The whole spiritual warfare theme is very epic. Um, Weapons of Our Warfare is an amazing title track and had a music video, and so like I know people are so fond of this album, and that is cool. I'm down with that. But for me, like I think there's so much better stuff that came later. Like I mean, Weapons was kind of the peak thrash era, even though I prefer the first one. But I and so many people want them to go back to that. And I'm like, no, we got there's better. It got so much better and varied and melodic and powerful and meaningful. And not that that wasn't meaningful. I don't want to imply that, but I just so for me, Weapons of Our Warfare is a solid A tier. I can't say that usually, like I said, if I'm choosing a classic one, Weapons is probably it's good, it's great, it deserves all of its accolades, but so much came better. And then of course there's What a Joke, released in 1991. Um and according to Jimmy, at least this was the most recent interview that I saw of him, and he said that like, this was their uh they were trying to get kicked off Intense Records, and they'd been doing thrash for like since 85 or 86, I can't remember. And they were kind of tired of that, and there was tension in the band, and so they were just trying to get kicked off their label, so they made What a Joke. The problem is they are really bad at that. um they're because I love What a Joke. Like it's just there is a lot of like joke songs and silly little things here and there. The lyrics have not aged well. There's especially a line in What a Joke that like I change it when I sing along because it's really hasn't aged well. Um, but the song, like if you look at the meaty songs on it, they're great. And I remember like when we first this came out Kingdom Bound of the next year. So I got Weapons, and then the next Kingdom Bound we went to Kingdom Bound. It was released during Kingdom Bound, and so when it came out, they like opened up the CD, they threw it in the CD player, and the intro starts, and it's the supplication intro from Weapons, and then they're like, "Are we really gonna do another record like this, guys?" And then it launches into Prophet of Idiocy, and that was such a monster riff and a monster tune. Like we were just our jaws were on the floor at how heavy it was. And so nobody really like in my circle was like, "Oh, this is a joke record or whatever." We thought this was awesome. And I still to this day really enjoy this record. I like the Silent Night. I like the Black Sabbath cover. However, that being said, I can't quite justify placing it in the A tier because there's a lot of fat on it, in terms of the joke stuff, and none of that's bad because I still listen to it. But I think if they had like just the whole jokey nature kind of holds it back just a little bit. So I'm putting it at the top of the B tier. I think that's a good place for that, though it does have some really great riffs. Um, and at this point is where we really have a shift from the thrash years to This was 1992. The next album was Day of Execution. And this is according to the most recent interview that I heard Jimmy do, um, that he was doing a solo album, wanted to do a solo album with Terry Scott Taylor from Daniel Amos, and he wanted, but Terry said kind of like, why don't you do Deliverance heaviness with your more melodic stuff? And he was kind of like, eh. And but they did it, and it totally works. Like it is exactly the kind of like shift that this band totally needed at the time, because they did 3 thrash records. They're all well received, at least from my perspective and the fan perspective. They're all very well received, but it's good to change and grow, and this was the perfect way to do that. And I don't think anybody at the time was like, "Oh, this is just, it's whatever." It was still Deliverance. It was just more Jimmy calls them the creative years, but and that's kind of what it was, just more creative, more melodic, more just able to kind of grow and expand and do things that you just can't do in thrash. And so I think this is I'm gonna go ahead and put this yeah, I'm gonna put that on the S tier, I think. Yeah, I think that's where that should go, because it definitely heralded a new era of Deliverance, and it's such a stellar album, such a good one, um, such a good one. And the next album we've got is their Intense Records did a series of um, what was recorded live in the studio. So, and they released them. I believe it was. I want to say it was '93. So January, February, March, April, May all had a different band do a live album, and Terry Taylor produced, which I'm sure was weird for him working with bands he never worked with, but that's neither here nor there. Um, so the first one was Deliverance, and I bought all of them. I bought all 5, and I like this one. I don't think the live albums, that series, got very good reviews, and I don't think this one got very good reviews. But I didn't see anything wrong with it. There's a lot of kind of joking around and messing around in the studio, which is fine. Like there's an improvised solo in The Call. I thought it was I thought maybe the track list was a little debut heavy, but other than that, I like this one, and I don't have a problem with it. We're gonna put it in B. It's not a live album, and there's only 6 real songs on there, so I think middle of the B tier. That's where that should go. And our next release is Learn from Deliverance. And this is my all-time favorite Deliverance album. Excuse me, I just ate dinner. This is my all-time favorite Deliverance album. Came out in '93, the fall of '93. I don't know the exact release date, because back in the day, release dates, it was whenever it showed up at the Christian bookstore. That's the release date. So whenever it showed up, that's when you got it. So I got it in the fall of '93, and at that time, I had kind of rededicated my life to Christ, and I had been a Christian, but I was a kid, so I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing at 44, but at the time, it was just, I felt like it was a new kind of era for me spiritually, and this album just like hit me right where I felt like I was at the time. And so I had a lot of memories of walking around my neighborhood, listening to this album, and just kind of being in God's presence and feeling like, you know, I was growing closer to God, and the lyrics of the songs just seemed like they felt like right where I was at that time. And aside from the fact that it goes farther than Stay does, because it's a lot slower album. There's a little bit more variety, but it's got Sanctuary on it, and it's got like The Rain, and it's got um 1990, and it's got like, oh, it's like every, I I don't know. We're gonna go. We're just this goes here. This goes here. I know a lot of people think it's kind of slow and boring. I never thought that. This album lives in my heart rent free. And I love it. I will always love it. I will always defend it to the death. And I love the like chunky, like like plodding chunky guitars in it. Oh, it's just I can't say enough good things about Learn. I love it. I don't like the cover album, the cover art though. The cover art I'm not wild about. Like it's just kind of like dudes. It's dudes and the name of the band. Like there's no. So other than the cover art, S tier, absolutely. Um, Next one is River Disturbance. This came out in 1994, the fall of 1994, I think. The fall again, release dates, which makes me wonder, like when you think about how music comes out. This is a sidebar here, if you don't mind. But you've got albums like when a normal band, that's not right. A secular band makes an album. They make an album. They usually tour, and it's 2, 3, sometimes 4 years between albums. Even back in the day, it would be 2 or so years before albums. But these intense records bands and some of these and these other Christian metal bands, it was every year. Like debut came out in '89, Weapons in '90, What a Joke '91, Stay '92, Learn '93, River '94, Camelot '95. So they had to write and record an album every single year and then tour on that album, presumably. And that's just crazy to me. That is crazy to me that somebody that bands could, and that was the same for Tourniquet, and it was the same for um I think was Blood I can't remember. Definitely Tourniquet did that. And it's crazy. It's an absolute insane pace. And I really I don't know how he did it. I really don't know how he did it. And then he got married and had kids during all this. Like, when did he must have never slept. Never slept ever. But anyway, River came out in '94, and I got it in the fall of '94, and it was definitely farther removed than even Learn was. So he's going even farther before. And originally, when I heard it, I liked it okay, but it was a little bit too far for me, I think, at the time. I listened to it, I liked it, but it just didn't capture me like Learn did. Um, and I think that was a lot of people, because if I remember, Jimmy got some death threats over this one. Like people like legitimately sent him death threats because he dared to make an album. But this was kind of like the album that I think he said this is his Abbey Road, or he wanted this to be his Abbey Road. Um, and I think this is an album that truly, like, you really need some mileage on you to appreciate. You need some years on you. You need some experience. You need to get knocked around a little bit, and then you can really, really appreciate this album. Because now this is one of my favorite albums. Like, I love this album to death. And the cover art here's the original. Well, there was the original, and then there was like another cover art with when an edition came out that is the one I have, with a woman on it, and there's like an actual river and stuff. And I actually prefer that cover art better. And this is cover art is the cover art from the most recent reissue where they put the old school logo on it. That's neither here nor there. I prefer the lady cover art. That's actually my favorite cover art. That's the one I have. And that version has the track I Thought on it, which I think is great, because I wish this album would have had a couple more tracks. I think it was supposed to, but they just ran out of time because Jimmy was like an absolute perfectionist, and they were like over budget and over time and the whole 9 yards. And then it comes out, and then he gets crap for it. But anytime Jimmy does anything, he gets crap for it. So it's not like, I mean, that poor man can't do nothing without somebody up his butt about it. So anyway, the River Disturbance. I love this album. It has Now and Then, which is one of my favorite Deliverance songs ever. I love Belltown. I love Speed of Light. I love Breathing Still. That song had to grow on me because I didn't used to like it. And I'm gonna put this right here in the A tier. And the reason why it's not S tier is because as much as I love this album, it is a little rickety in the back in terms of like the front half of the album is solid songs. Like you go use 5 tracks and they're all like bang, they all fit, whatever. Then the second half is like the rap song Map, which is weird, which is just a weird track, piano ballad, and then it ends with Breathing Still. So it seems like thematically it's a little bit like I'm moving my hands, you can't see it, but like, and now I like all those songs. I like the rap song Wood 12 Tribe called A Little Sleep. I like that. I like Matt. I think Map's great. I love it. And I have grown to love the piano ballad. But I think thematically it's a little bit like we're unified on the front half and then the back half is a little bit so that's why I put it in A tier. And I'm not sure. That's just, I don't know. It's just going in the A tier because of that. And I do think that I Thought is an excellent song. I wish it was on the album proper. I wish it was on other editions of the album, but you know, I don't. They didn't ask me when they they don't ask me. He should, but he doesn't. Not that he shouldn't. So next one, um, I get lots of views, y'all. I'm a professional. Next one is A Decade Of. This is a best of, basically. Not much to say about it other than it does have Rescue on it, which was an outtake of Weapons of Our Warfare. It's an excellent song, but it doesn't really fit. The liner notes have some good. The liner notes have some good uh, thoughts. Like Jimmy got to write some liner notes, and they're brief, but they're informative. Um, but there's, I mean, it's a best of with Rescue, and Rescue would appear on just about every reissue of Weapons of Our Warfare. So I mean, if you're a completionist, you can pick this up, but if you're not, you can skip out on this one. It's a best of. 95, of course, we're back on that relentless pace of albums. Um, Camelot and Smithereens came out. I got this around Christmas time in 1995. Which I'll always remember because I got Chrono Trigger for Christmas that year. And if you know what Chrono Trigger is, you know how good that Christmas was. Anyway, so Camelot and Smithereens is a concept album. I did not know this at the time because there's not really any indication that it is a concept album. It is about a girl named Lindsay. She gets pregnant by a member of like the pastor's son, I think, and she gets thrown out because institutions are inherently abusive, and that discussion is outside the scope of this video. But I kind of viewed this when it came out as a little bit of a return to form in 95 when I heard it. I do enjoy this album. I think it's a solid album. I'm not sure why I might have thought it was a return to form. It's still very, you know, it kind of plodding and melodic, and you know, so it's keeping in with what he was doing. But I guess it's a lot more unified, excuse me, than River seemed to be at the time. And I like this album. Some of my favorite, In You is one of my favorite Deliverance songs of all time. Make My Bed in Hell, excellent song. Bookends, excellent. So there's a lot of good stuff on here, but I don't think, because they had so much trouble with this album, in terms of, because a lot of things were planned for this album that never happened. A lot of like they had voiceovers that didn't work out. The recording, I think, was very difficult. If the documentary on the redo is to be believed, which why would you, you know? So it's just it's not what it could be. So it's in B tier, but it's still good. I think it's, you know, I'd still enjoy that album very much. And so that ends kind of the Intense Records years of Deliverance. This ends the relentless album a year pace. After this album, the band breaks up. You get some reissues and some things here, which are the next couple. And then after this point, every few years, Jimmy would reform Deliverance with usually a different lineup, except for Manny, because Manny's his kind of his bassist, which is good because Manny's an excellent bassist. One of the most underrated bassists, I feel, in just music in general. And it's really, really a shame that he's not wider known because he's such a good bassist. If you listen to any of these, Learn, River, Camelot, any of these albums with Manny on them, he has a distinctive style, and you know that that's Manny. Like, and having a distinctive style as a bass player is kind of a rare thing because so many times a bass player is thump 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 like, but to have like oh yeah, that's Les Claypool, that's that's Manny Morales, that's like having that's Tim Chandler, like having a distinctive bass style is really something else, and he's really not as well known. Anyway, that's another sidebar. So this album here, was there was a record company in the early 2000s called M8 or Millennium 8 Records, and they put out reissues of several things. They'd also dig up demos and put those out and reissue some things, usually with terrible cover art, with little stupid borders around them, and barely any liner notes. But that's a discussion for another time. This first 4 years is like really, really rough demos and live tracks from before they were signed to Intense Records. And there's things with Jimmy talking about the evolution of the band and what they were going through and what they were doing. So this is kind of like the ministry years, what Jimmy would refer to them as, I think, if he still calls them that. Um, and it's worth one listen, but the recording quality on the music tracks is extremely rough. So this is not something that you're going to listen to over and over. It is something that you'll listen to once as a fan, and then you'll be like, that was interesting. I'm glad I assimilated that information, and now I'm never going to listen to it again. So it goes in the D tier. It is definitely for super fans like me. It is not for um, it is not for the casual fan or somebody that you want to introduce to Deliverance. This is for us hardcore mofos. Next one is Greetings of Death, etc. We're gonna go plop this actually behind here because M8 was, I have a beef against M8. Basically, it's Greetings of Death with weapons demos. I think that A Space Called You and Attack is on this. I think it's on the Greeting of Death one too. I think those are extra tracks on the Greeting of Death because those were the California metal tracks. But it's basically the same thing. It's Greeting of Death with weapons instrumental tracks, I believe. And so it's, it's whatever it is. And again, kind of for super fans, not really for casual fans. But it is listenable. It does have listenable music on it. And then, so in about 2000 or 2001, and I can't remember if it's 2000 or 2001, Jimmy reformed Deliverance. Manny's back. Other people are back as well, whose names escape me because they're not Jimmy and Manny. And he put out Assimilation on this little tiny, tiny label called Indie Dream. And I remember because I was so super excited that Deliverance was back and making new music. I was so excited. And so I ordered it from Indie Dream, and it took forever. And I was in Bible college at the time, so every day I would go check my mailbox and see if it was there, and it wasn't every day. So this went on for weeks, and then finally it came in, and I was so happy, and I listened to it and I loved it because I love everything the first time I hear it, whether it's good or not. And and listen to it. I just listened to it over and over and over again. That was fall of 2000 or 2001, whenever it came out. I can't remember. 2001 had to be. And so anyway, listened to it, loved it. I still like it. I don't like it as much as I did originally. This has some electronic elements. to it where Jimmy was had a side project called Fearful Symmetry that was kind of a pop dark wave sort of um, dark wave sort of thing, and started melding elements of that into Assimilation. So you'll hear some of that. It's not like a full blown industrial record or anything, but you do hear some elements of that, and that's not bad. I mean, it makes the album unique, I think, which is good in the scope of of the discography. But I, upon like as age has come, I don't think it's the strongest record. Um, I don't like the title track, which is rare for me to just not like a song. I'm not wild about that title track. The rest of it's really good, and I sing along all the time. Um, but just it's not. It doesn't quite. It hasn't stayed with me like some of these other albums have. So we're gonna go ahead and put Assimilation right here in the B tier. I think middle of the B tier is a good place for that. There's a couple of different editions of that. There's the Indie Dream. There's a retroactive re-release that has different cover art. Um, just depends on what you want to look for. The Indie Dream one's gone. You can't get that. I don't know where that record company folded, and they're done. Next album is a live album that was recorded at Cornerstone, and this was actually a series of albums um, that, like Deliverance, Bride, Sacred Warrior, I think Recon, and Guardian all did, and it was like 80s metal. It was tagged as 80s metal retro night or whatever when they recorded them, and this is an excellent live album from Deliverance. Like I wished we would have maybe gotten a couple more, like at least one more like good solid live album, because this is great. And I am actually going to go ahead and my copy had CD rot, and so I have not been able to find another copy. So if you've got one and you want to sell it to me or give it to me, please feel free to do so. I'm gonna put this in the A tier because it really, like, I remember listening to this in my car at Bible college, and I was like, I really felt like I was there, and it was energizing. I just loved it. This was a super live album. I think Jimmy complained with the 80s metal night branding because this was when Assimilation either was gonna come out or had come out, and they played Limitless Light and From the Beginning. I think that's what that song's called. I think at this show, and they're just not on this album. But he was kind of upset that, like, I'm doing kind of a new thing with Deliverance and we're going in a new direction. This is kind of a revival, and y'all are like kind of making it retro 80s, whatever. Um, so I, which is fair, honestly. But, I haven't listened to. I think I listened to the Sacred Warrior one. It's okay. I haven't listened to any of the other ones, any of the live series of that, and I don't really have any plans to. So as per usual, a few years would go by. I believe this was either I think this was 2007. As above, so below came out. Jimmy got crap for the title because he says in the title track, "So mote it be," which is, I guess, a cult, something a cult people say, I guess, and it's so dumb. So dumb. Poor Jimmy. This man, I'm telling you what, like I've been a fan of his and his output for years and years and years. This man cannot do anything without somebody pissing and moaning about it. Oh my gosh. If I was him, I'm sure it drives him bonkers because it drives me bonkers and I'm just watching from the sidelines. Anyway, As Above, So Below came out. It's heavy. It's definitely a return to the heavier side of Deliverance. Mike Phillips is back. I can't remember if Manny is back for this, but he's got to be, right? It's Manny. Um, and the thing is, that's weird about this album is I don't like it. Like this is the only Deliverance record that and I don't know what the problem is because there's some really good songs on here. Screaming, Should We Cross Path, Return to Form, the Thistles instrumental. They're all, I mean, like technically, objectively, that I should love this album. Like I don't know what my like I'm sure the problem is on my end, but every time I listen to this album, I feel like my shoes are on the wrong feet. Like there's just something feels off. And I've never been able to put my finger on it. And I've never I've never been able to put my finger on why this album just doesn't do it for me. Um so I hate to do this, but this is gonna go on the C tier. It is going to go ahead of the best of because there's actually new songs. This has also been re-released with new cover art. I prefer this cover art, but I think Jimmy prefers the new cover art. But that's fine. It's his band. He can prefer whatever he wants. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to look. I think I'm gonna have to listen to this one a couple of times again because I didn't. You'd think I would if I was gonna make a tier list. Excuse me while I take a sip of water. You'd think I would do that to make a tier list, but I've listened to these albums so many times, I already know what I think of them. So it's fine. But yeah, I've never throughout the years I've never like most of the rest of these albums except for like the back 4 years and the Greetings of Death one. I at some point go, I want to listen to that album, but this one I just don't, and I don't know why. So it's going in the C. Um, not D because it's technically a good like objectively it's not that it's poorly written, recorded or anything like that. It's just I just don't care for it. So I don't know why. So it's not fair to put it in the D, but my personal taste is going in the C. But my personal philosophy is not everything has to be for me and not everything has to be for you. So it's okay if it's here in the C because somebody else has it in the S tier, and that's okay if they have it in their S tier. That's great. Not everything has to be for everybody. Sidebar number 14 or wherever we're on. So a couple years later, I believe this was 2013. I think this was supposed to be like the last quote unquote last album, but Jimmy kind of gets in the habit of saying like every album since Assimilation is going to be the last album, and then a couple of years later, a new album comes out, which tickles me to death. Anyway, I think this is Hear What I Say. It came out in 2013. I got it for Christmas in 2013, and it's kind of like a walk through all of the eras of Deliverance. So you have a couple like real heavy thrashier tunes on there. You have some stuff that is evocative of Learn and River, and you have a cool acoustic that's just Jimmy's voice and acoustic guitar, which I absolutely love that song. There's an Iron Maiden cover, which is cool. It's kind of short. It's only got 9 tracks on it. I kind of wish there would have been another track or two on here, especially since one track is an intro and another is a cover. It's kind of. However, I do like this one. I like this one. Where are we going to put this one? I think we're going to put it right there, right behind Camelot. I've always wondered if the cover art is significant because the cross logo is part of the bandana that's muting him, and I'm sure there's significance to that. But I like Hear What I Say. I don't think, and I do think it is a good retrospective of the band's history. And I remember watching that, and that was when Matt Smith regenerated into Peter Capaldi on that Christmas special, and I was in New York for that, and I got to see snow, and I've been in Georgia forever, so I don't get to see much snow. And then a few years go by. Believe this Subversive Kind is like the last of the has like new material on it. And the other reason why I kind of put Eraserhead on here too is because these I think were recorded around the same time. The Subversive Kind was a Kickstarter album. Eraserhead was self-financed, but like Subversive Kind was going to be the thrash, and Eraserhead was going to be more the creative side. And the Subversive Kind, it definitely does that. It is definitely a return to thrash. I kind of feel like it's Jimmy's, like his Rain in Blood, Slayer's Rain in Blood. And I think I'm also get kind of a Sepultura, like Chaos AD Roots vibe, just in the fact that like there's not a lot of intricate riffing necessarily. There's just sheer power. And so this album kind of like kicks the door down, punches you in the face, and then leaves. And so because there's only like 8 tracks, all the 8 tracks are heavy, and like I said, just the overwhelming sense of power in this album um is really what it's all about with this one. And I'm not sure where I want to put this one. I because I'm kind of a sucker for the creative years, I tend to prefer Eraserhead over Subversive Kind. Um, but Subversive Kind is real. I think we're gonna put this in the back of the A tier because there's some really good tracks on here. The Black Hand, the title track, um, Center of It All. Oh, so just like mosh worthy tracks. Cover art's kind of cool too, and I think he got in trouble for this too because it's not Jimmy if he doesn't get in trouble for something. It's just not. So I got to hear I got to hear Ego off of Eraserhead because Jimmy like sent it to me, and I can't remember if he sent me the whole album or not. But I got to listen to this before it came out. Yeah, I did. He did. I'm pretty sure he did. I can't remember why or how. I think it was like if the first few people message me, I'll send them to him and I message him. Anyway, I got to hear it before it came out and I love it. I loved it. Ego was amazing. Indecisive, I think, is that what has a bass line. Manny's back on bass, of course, because he always is. Um, the Watcher, digital postage stamp, excellent tune, nice, heavy, like The Watchers is probably one of, I think, the best closing songs of any album I've ever heard. Like, it's The Watchers is like it's as good as Sanctuary is as a closer. The Watchers is a phenomenal closer, and Memoria is on here too, which was also on a Fearful Symmetry album. But so I really like this one, and I said I'm really more partial to the creative years, as you can see by this tier. Um, So I really enjoy this album. It's got Entertaining Angels, which is a Newsboys cover, which means Jimmy has made me like a Newsboys song, which I guess I'll forgive him for, but it is phenomenal, and I don't want to hear the original. I have no desire to hear the original, and I'm not going to, but this is good. Um, so I'm going to put this right behind River in the A tier, and it's good. And if you don't have it, you should go out and get it because we don't need a 400th re-release of Weapons or the original album or the debut. Just go get new Jimmy stuff so he can make new stuff instead of buying the old stuff. And that brings us to the final Deliverance album as of this date. This is Deliverance, Camelot, and Smithereens redo. Uh, when we talked about Camelot before, we know that I said that there was a lot of challenges, a lot of the stuff that Jimmy wanted got stripped out. He wasn't able to do. Well, this one, he tried to crowdfund it and it didn't go well. Tried to crowdfund it twice and it didn't go well, which is unfortunate but eventually it did get done. It took years and years and years and years. It felt like years to do it because the crowdfunder started like shortly after the crowdfunder for Subversive Kind had ended, or they kind of overlapped. I can't remember. It was a long time. Um, so it was supposed to come out in 2021. It finally came out in 2022, and it is absolutely amazing. It is like the difference between the original and this one is like playing Final Fantasy on the old Nintendo and then playing the Pixel remaster on a 4K television. Like it's the difference between that it's like the album in HD with all the voiceovers. The production is full and in your face, and there's the production is very modern, and it's so heavy. It's heavier than it's a lot heavy. I feel like it's a lot heavier than the original. And Jimmy's voice sounds amazing, just as good as it did on the original, maybe even a little bit better. I love this. I love this album, and I bought it twice actually because I originally kickstarted it. I backed it for the like just the CD, which, and I'm proud to say, the reason why there was a CD only thing was because of me, because I said I wanted to back this, but the original backing was like $50, and I didn't have that. But I did want to back like a a CD only, and then I backed the Red Roof, so I got a cassette, and then I got the regular CD, and then when by the time it finally came out, I actually had money, and I went and bought the like deluxe edition with the book and everything, and because I'm a sucker for good packaging, and so I've actually bought this album twice, three times if you count the Red Roof, the cassette, um, four times if you count the original. You're welcome, Jimmy. I hope you enjoyed that cheeseburger that I bought you from McDonald's. But I love this. We're gonna go pop this. I think we're gonna put that. Nope, nope, not behind. We're gonna put that right there after learn. Because if I like go to it like it's learn the top there. That's what I go to. It's a phenomenal. So that's it. That's all of the albums Deliverance ranked. Thank you for watching. If you watched, if you liked this and you want me to do other artists, I would love to because this was actually quite fun. And I'll see you for the next video.